in order for the reader in today's world to accurately interpret the scriptures. He or she will have to understand the culture in their era. In their era. Back in the days of the prophets, back in the days of Moses, in the days of Jesus and the apostles. And how the writers applied the same in explaining God's promise to their immediate audience. Let's examine a word that has been bastardized in our day and that has even formed a religion. It's been bastardized and it has formed a religion. And that is the word Sabbath. The word Sabbath, or rest, or Shabbath. Shabbat. S-H-A-B-B-A-T-H. Shabbat. Or Sabbath. S-A-B-B-A-T-H. Rest, Sabbath, or Shabbat. Genesis, the 2nd chapter, the 1st to the 3rd verse. PJ, let's begin.
Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them.
Next verse.
And on the 7th day God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the 7th day from all his work which he had made.
Next verse.
And God blessed the 7th day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made.
Now observe the words, the 7th day. Then observe the word rest. The word seventh was translated from the Hebrew word shebiyi. S-H-E-B-I-Y-I-Y. S-H-E-B-I-Y-I-Y. Which implies ordinal Sabbath. Ordinal seventh. Like seventh time. Now you must recall that the audience of the book of Genesis are the children of Israel who were delivered from oppression. The audience were the children of Israel who were delivered from bondage, from oppression in the land of Egypt. So as we explained, Moses will employ terminologies that his audience were conversant with to teach them God's faithfulness. Moses will employ terminologies that his audience were conversant with to teach them God's faithfulness, which is his promise. God's faithfulness, which is his promise, his righteousness. One of such that Moses will employ as a terminology to teach God's faithfulness and God's promises will be the phrase seventh day. Seventh day. That historically the seventh day was a reference day set aside in the ancient Near Eastern culture to worship idols. Historically, the seventh day was a reference day set aside in the ancient Near Eastern culture to worship idols or deities. So it is a paganistic reference to a day of worship. It's a paganistic reference to a day of worship. And I will give you examples in scripture. Judges chapter 14 verse 15 to 18 PJ. Judges 14, 15 to 18.
And it came to pass on the 7th day that they said unto Samson's wife, Entice thy husband, that he may declare unto us the riddle, lest we burn thee and thy father's house with fire. Have ye called us to take that we have? Is it not so? And Samson's wife wept before him and said, Thou dost but hate me, and lovest me not. Thou hast put forth a riddle unto the children of my people, and hast not told it me. And he said unto her, Behold, I have not told it my father nor my mother, and shall I tell it thee?
17.
And she wept before him the 7 days while their feast lasted. And it came to pass on the 7th day that he told her, because she lay sore upon him. And she told the riddle to the children of her people.
Next verse.
And the men of the city said unto him on the 7th day before the sun went down, What is sweeter than honey, and what is stronger than a lion? And he said unto them, If ye had not plowed with my heifer, He had not found out my riddle.
So you can see that the seventh day was paganistic. They used it for deities and for idol worship. You also find it in Esther 1:10, where it says, on the seventh day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehumam, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, and Abagtha, Zethar, and Kakas, the 7 chamberlains that served in the presence of Ahasuerus the king. Then you also find the use of the word 7 day for deities in Jeremiah chapter 41 verse 1. So Moses applied the same narrative to explain the worship of God. Moses applied the same narrative to apply or to imply the worship of God. In Genesis 8:4, PJ, Genesis chapter 8 verse number 4.
And the ark rested in the 7th month on the 17th day of the month upon the mountains of Ararat.
The ark rested on the 7th month. Then Exodus 12:15, it says in Exodus 12:15, for whosoever eateth living bread from the first day until the 7th day, the soul shall be cut off. Verse 16 says, and in the first day there shall be a holy convocation, and in the 7th day there shall be an holy convocation to you. Then Exodus 13 verse 6, 7 days thou shalt eat unleavened bread, and in the 7th day shall be a feast to the Lord. Then you can write down Exodus 16:26 to 29. You will see the use of the word 7th day, which is Sabbath. Then you look at Exodus chapter 20 verse 10 to 11. Exodus 20, 10 to 11. Then Exodus 21 verse 2. Exodus 21 verse 2. PJ, read for me. Exodus 21 verse 2.
If thou buy an Hebrew servant, 6 years he shall serve, and in the 7th he shall go out free for nothing.
In the 7th they shall go out free for nothing. Now let's look at the word rested. 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 The word rested was translated from the Hebrew word Shabbat. Shabbath, which means to repose, to desist from exertion. And it is a verb. It's a verb form of the word Sabbath, which was translated from the Hebrew word Shabbat. Sabbath from the Hebrew word Shabbat. Genesis 8:22. While the earth remaineth, seed time, harvest, cold, heat, summer, winter, day and night shall not cease. Now, please, a critical fact to note is that the word Shabbat is not seen within the conversation of the patriarchs in the book of Genesis. The word Shabbat is not seen in the conversation of the patriarchs in the book of Genesis. So which means it is a word understood by Moses and his audience. The word Shabbat is a word understood by Moses and his audience, which were the children of Israel who were delivered from the oppression of Egypt. And we look at where the word is used. Exodus chapter 5 verse 5, PJ. Exodus chapter 5 verse 5.
And Pharaoh said, behold, the people of the land now are many, and ye make them rest from their burdens.
You make them rest from their burdens. Shabbat. It was applied to describe a cessation from work or burden. This word was also a temple worship terminology. Temple worship in the ancient Near Eastern culture, where men cease from their work to worship idols. It also refers to deities in the temple resting to continue their work within the temple. Used for deities in the temple resting to continue their work within the temple. You will see the word used in Exodus 16:30. Exodus 16:30. So the people rested on the 7th day. Then you will see it again in Exodus 23:12. Exodus 23:12. 6 days shalt do thy work, and on the seventh day thou shalt rest. Exodus 31:17. Then you can also take these ones down. Exodus 34:21 and Exodus 26:6 and 34. Exodus 26:6 and 34. So it suffices to say that the terms 7 day and Shabbat are terminologies from the culture of their day. They were terminologies from the culture of their day, employed by Moses and the prophets in their writings. They were terminologies from the culture of their day, employed by Moses and the prophets in their writings. Now, in the writings of Moses, the word Shabbat occurs 37 times. The word Shabbat occurs 37 times. The first mention of that word Shabbat is Exodus 16:23. PJ, Exodus 16:23, 25, 26, 29. Let's go.
And he said unto them, This is that which the Lord hath said. Tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. Bake that which ye will bake today, and seethe that ye will seethe, and that which remaineth over lay up for you to be kept until the morning.
25.
And Moses said, Eat that today, for today is the Sabbath unto the Lord. Today ye shall not find it in the field.
26.
6 days ye shall gather it, but on the seventh day, which is the Sabbath, in it there shall be none.
29.
See, for that the Lord hath given you the Sabbath, therefore he giveth you on the 6th day the bread of 2 days. Abide ye every man in his place. Let no man go out of his place on the 7th day.
Now observe this. Number 1, verse 23. The rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. Verse 23. Verse 25. For today is a Sabbath unto the Lord. Verse 23. The rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. Verse 25. For today is a Sabbath unto the Lord. Verse 29. For that the Lord had given you the Sabbath, let no man go out of his place on the 7th day. Please take note of those. Now, so the phrase holy Sabbath unto the Lord further lends credence to the fact that this is specifically for Yahweh. Holy Sabbath unto the Lord. Specifically for Yahweh. For God, and not other Egyptian idols, as was the culture of the day. That word Sabbath unto the Lord distinguishes this particular Sabbath from the cultural Sabbath. Then Moses taught similarly in Exodus chapter 20 verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Verse 9. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. I feel Ghana close. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, or thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and the earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the 7th day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Please listen carefully. The word remember the Sabbath was translated from the Hebrew word zakar. Z-A-K-A-R. Zakar. Which means to mark. To mark. So as to be recognized. To mark so as to be recognized. To remember by implication, to mention. Or make mention of. Or be mindful, or recount, or record. That word remember by implication is to mention, to make mention of, to be mindful, to recount, or to record. The word remember, make to be remembered, or bring, call, come, keep, put. Call, come, keep, put. Call to remembrance, come to remembrance, keep in remembrance, put in remembrance. To call, to come, to keep, to put in remembrance. It also implies to fix one's thought on an event or news. To fix one's thought on an event or news. Now also notice that the pretext, that the context of Moses' explanation was concerning their worship of God. Their worship of God. If you read Exodus 20 from verse 1, and God spake all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God, which hath brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquities of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me. Verse 6. And showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. 7. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. So in essence, the word remember implies to meditate. The word remember implies to meditate, or to recall, or to think about, or to also mention. The word remember implies to meditate, to recall, to think about, or to also mention. In other words, they were instructed by Moses to meditate upon God's promised righteousness. To meditate upon God's promised righteousness. And to mention. To meditate upon God's promised righteousness and to mention. Please don't miss these two words. To meditate upon God's promised righteousness and to mention. The mention there you can put in bracket, to preach. To meditate upon God's promised righteousness and to preach, or to mention the same in the nations of the earth. To preach the same. So they were to meditate upon it for themselves, and they were to preach God's promised righteousness in the nations of the earth. So Joshua, who took over from Moses, will teach. Joshua 1:8 PJ, Joshua chapter 1 verse number 8.
This book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but thou shalt meditate therein day and night, that thou mayest observe to do according to all that is written therein. For then thou shalt make thy way prosperous, and then thou shalt have good success.
So Joshua told them, meditate on the writings of Moses. Meditate on the writings of Moses. The explanation of the covenant, because the writings of Moses are the explanation of the covenant that God made to Abraham. The writings of Moses are the explanation of the covenant that God made with their father Abraham. That is God's faithfulness, which is his promised righteousness. God's faithfulness, which is his promised righteousness. So they were to meditate on the writings of Moses, his explanation of the covenant that God made with their father Abraham. That is, they were to meditate on God's faithfulness, which is his promised righteousness. Number one. Number two, they were to announce it. They were to preach it. They were to announce it to others in the nations of the earth. To others in the nations of the earth. Now observe that Moses had instructed Israel concerning the Sabbath. Exodus 16, 23, 24, 25, 26 PJ. Exodus 16, 23 to 26.
And he said unto them, This is that which the Lord hath said. Tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. Bake that which ye will bake today, and seethe that ye will seethe. And that which remaineth over lay up for you to be kept until the morning.
Next verse.
And they laid it up till the morning, as Moses bade, and it did not stink, neither was there any worm therein.
Next verse.
And Moses said, Eat that today, for today is the Sabbath unto the Lord. Today ye shall not find it in the field.
Next verse.
6 days ye shall gather it, but on the seventh day, which is the Sabbath, in it there shall be none.
6 days you shall gather it. Okay? So he tells them of the Sabbath as the seventh day, when they were not to go to the fields to gather. So the Sabbath was for them to cease from their works in order to worship God. The Sabbath was for them to cease from their works in order to worship God. Moses said the same to the children of Israel in his account on the same event. Deuteronomy 5:12, keep the Sabbath day to sanctify it as the Lord thy God had commanded thee. 13, 6 days thou shalt labor and do all thy work. 14, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou nor thy son nor thy daughter nor thy maidservant. 15, and remember that thou wast a servant in the land of Egypt, and that the Lord thy God brought thee out thence through a mighty hand and by a stretched out arm. Therefore the Lord thy God commanded thee to keep the Sabbath day. Now in the context of these scriptures, man was to do nothing. Man was to do no work. Kabayada. Man was to do no work. All man was to do was to remember. That's all. All man was to do was to remember. That is, to think about God's deliverance and redemption from bondage. That's all man was to do. And his promised righteousness, which will be fulfilled by the promised Messiah. His promised righteousness, they were just to remember that God was faithful and that God has a promised Messiah which will fulfill his righteousness. Man was not to try to fulfill God's righteousness, but man was to remember that God has a recall the word remember. So we're clear. Say, remember the word remember. Recall that word remember. Somebody said, I'm confused. Somebody told him, calm down, pray in tongues, and continue to listen. You will understand. Is that not true? Calm down, pray in tongues, continue. You will understand. Amen. This person must be new too. Don't worry, you are safe, you're covered. We got your back. Praise God. So remember or recall, the word remember was translated from the Hebrew word zakar, Z-A-K-A-R, which implies to consider, to think about, to recall an event. Zakar, to consider, to think about, to recall an event. In essence, what Moses implied by remember the Sabbath was to recall or think about